What we build every day is really life-saving and life-changing. And for me to end up at that event in New York this week, and here I am thanking these mayors for keeping us safe during such trying times in our country, and he's thanking me for building the technology that he knows he used in his Humvee. So it's a pretty amazing world, the technology and what it does.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I am really excited to welcome our new friend, Nicole Russo, President and CEO of Microboard. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely my pleasure. It's Made in America podcast, Nicole. So we always start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Absolutely. So we are a manufacturer of printed circuit board assemblies. It's in the EMS, Electronic Manufacturing Services sector. So we do not design our customers' products, but they bring us their design, and it includes the actual printed circuit board and all the components. And we manufacture it and ship it out on their behalfs. And the reason we do it is we believe in technology, and we want to make sure that we are a leading firm of the future of where technology is going.
Great place to be. So just really quickly, so manufacturing printed board assemblies, meaning like you put the boards together. I guess I was just trying to tease out the word assemblies as opposed to just the board itself. Is it just nothing different, just my understanding of it?
Yeah, so it can be a little complex to understand how it works. So we buy the actual bare printed circuit board, which contains all the circuitry and the layers and the laminates and the copper. And then we go buy a bill of material of the actual electronic components. And then I equate our business a little bit to making cookies, although it's much more complex than that. Because you essentially buy all the ingredients and then we go ahead and assemble it and put it through an oven. And on the other end comes out a board that has solder paste that's now electrically conductive and allowing electricity and technology to run through it. But we also take those printed circuit board assemblies and build them into upper level plastics, sheet metals, different housings. So that's known as the box build or the high level assembly. So for example, we're a prime provider of defibrillators. We've also built fiber optics boxes. We've built video systems. We are the only manufacturer in the country of an indoor shot detection system, which we can talk about a little bit more in today's world. Mm-hmm. So those are some examples of the actual printed circuit board assembly going into an upper housing.
So just if I could pull that back. So instead of just making the board, sometimes you'll actually make the larger assembly. So not make the defibrillator itself, but make the box the board goes in?
We actually build the whole defibrillator.
You do?
We do.
Okay.
We buy the plastics. We actually also build the batteries. We have an ultrasonic welder in-house. So we put all the plastics together, screws, everything has to align correctly and be totally ready for packaging into final output to a customer.
Oh, so that's actually significantly more than just the board itself, it seems like.
It is, and our business right now is about 25% of that. It's the other 75% is the printed circuit board technology.
And so on the board, you just print the board, send that off, and that gets further assembled somewhere else. But in that 25%, you make the whole final product.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
So the ones where we don't make the product, in those cases, we do a lot of work for the military. So those are usually landing at a technology center, getting additional programming. Usually it's secure clearance things, and then being put into an end product that's then shipped to the warfighters. Or in the case of some customers, it might be going into a cloud farm, so it actually doesn't have a housing. It's going to go right into a server rack. And,
right, the board itself just goes in. And
exactly.
Anyway, I was about to get super nerdy because I know a lot about that stuff, but we'll let that go. I'm going to take a step back before we go forward. And I just think it's super cool that Teddy Ruxpin has a component of Microboard's history. And so, I mean, there's probably a lot of people out there that actually don't know what Teddy Ruxpin is. So maybe we'll start with what that is and then tell us what it has to do with Microboard.
Yeah, sure. So it actually, in 1983, almost 40 years ago now, my dad started our company. He was, at that time, a consultant to what was the rising of Silicon Valley, Atari, Teddy Ruxpin, which was a talking toy. And some of those businesses...
Talking teddy bear, really?
Talking teddy bear. Yeah, it's a very famous one.
A very famous one.
And you had to have one when you were a kid. And so some of those businesses had gotten into consumer trouble. The products weren't performing as well or selling as well. And my dad was actually a workout specialist trying to help those companies. In the midst of doing that, he also had told the Teddy Ruxpin management, he said, I can fix these bears. Some of them are not talking. And
which is a problem when someone buys a talking bear and it doesn't talk.
It is.
And it repeated, right? Didn't it like record something?
It did. Its eyes moved.
Yeah.
So what he did is he opened a small shop down in Stratford, Connecticut, and brought in some employees with wooden benches and very basic, and we started repairing them. And at that time I was 12. And so fast forward, as that evolved and they needed different iterations of things, we kept bringing the technology just to a different level. So that was our very, very humble beginnings.
Yes. Yeah, you've certainly come a heck of a long way from Teddy Ruxpin to defibrillators, internal shot detectors, and DoD stuff. I do want to ask you about the business and sort of like the strategy around how you've built both business so successfully and how you grow, because I think that's really interesting and the audience could learn a ton from it. But I want to talk about sort of your history, because I find it's really fascinating how people kind of find their way into manufacturing and the different paths they take to get there. So tell me about your path.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I think what made me as a person, which is kind of off the radar a little bit, which I was an avid equestrian. I actually rode horses and showed horses internationally and across the whole country very competitively. So I did that throughout my high school, actually deferred college. It built in me a rigor, a discipline, a respect for people and animals and teamwork. And I always worked at our company in the summers. That was my dad's rule. We had to get good grades and then we had to work there in the summer. And I actually remember showing up to the office the first day, and my mom will tell this story, ready to go, dressed up. And my dad said, go to the warehouse and get a broom. And I was like, what? So he clearly said, made us work from, and that was great. So as he sent us off to college, and we were very blessed that he put us through college. When we came back, he basically said we were welcome to work at the company, but we were not allowed to work in a management role without and higher education. So he really encouraged us to get a master's, law degree, anything we wanted to excel in another education platform, and then work someplace else for 5 to 7 years. So I went off to Northeastern and got my master's in accounting and finance. During that, the Northeastern program has an internship component to it. So I spent 6 months at GE Capital in a very small but dynamic boutique lending group. There was 70 people, $13 billion of assets that were being lent. And I ended up staying there. I went back, got my degree, went back to GE, and spent about 6 years doing distressed debt with that group. And that included clients like Enron, WorldCom. I worked on the end of the payphone. Actually, we were collecting all of our payphone assets at that time. I worked on some cinema deals. So what it really taught me over that time period was what not to do in business, what a good, healthy capital structure looks like for a company, what a not healthy capital structure. And also, because GE Capital was not a bank, we were able to go in and essentially put turnaround management in and work with them. And I learned a lot through a lot of those consultants and turnaround managers.
So I just want to just pull that for 1 second. So when you're in the G Capital component, is they're coming in after the failure. So it wasn't that they had debt that went bad. They went in to say like a WorldCom or something after the problems.
Both, actually. Okay. It's a combination of both. In some cases, they had lent, and those creditors weren't able to pay, and we were restructuring. In other cases, we were coming in providing debtor in possession financing and different things. So it was a combination of both.
And so were you able to put in sort of distress management? Sort of interesting that your dad was doing that right back in the day. It's a little parallel there, but were you able to kind of interface with those managers and sort of see what they were doing and sort of from the financial and see the results of, did that turnaround management actually help to pay back? Is that some lessons learned there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were on the ground at the companies working with the consultant firms. Yeah. And as a lender, you have to stay arm's length, but you're still watching how they're working out of the situation and really learning that, hey, this model that we tried to run over here worked. We did some acquisitions. Sometimes we're putting more money in to do acquisitions. Other times we're selling assets. Sometimes we're changing a management team out. Whatever that is, I was close to it and watching whether it was or was not getting us to our goals.
Do you ever think about, thinking about what you learned from that and any like kind of nuggets that you feel like were you really able to apply to help Microboard be more successful?
Well, my dad would tell you a story of when I decided to come back to our business, which I actually was going to stay at GE Capital and really enjoyed it. Loved the team there. GE was on a very big Six Sigma black belt journey. I was slated, I was doing an integration with another group at GE. I was slated to become a black belt. And it wasn't in my spirit that it was being done in a way that I really understood or could embrace. Fast forward, and we'll touch on this I don't know if you've read the book, Lights Out.
Something I have not been able to finish.
It is a phenomenal book about GE. And GE's, obviously, it was a tremendous company, but the path they were on at that time for me just didn't make sense for where I wanted to go. So I came back to our family business. And in doing that, within the first month, said to my dad, what are you doing with these 3 customers? I know that we're going to have financial trouble with them, and here I am, this kind of young kid, and he's looking at me going, what do you mean? Yeah. And so I quickly was able to come in and really assess, and we weren't going to end up in major trouble, but they certainly maybe didn't have the credit we wanted.
So when you say end up in trouble, you're saying the creditworthiness of the customer, or were you saying the structure of the purchase agreement with like?
Both, actually. In one case, we had some POs with a customer that maybe were not performing the way we wanted. He wasn't performing the way we wanted. The thing together as a group was not where we wanted to be. And as you start to talk to those customers and say, hey, how can we work this out? You can feel that it's a bit shallow on the other end. And you're not getting that CFO or finance or feedback that you'd like. So I was able to pick that up pretty quick and essentially work us out of a couple of those customers before it got worse. And now that's really been a foundation of our business ever since we've started was credit. We actually have the 3 C's of our business: credit, culture, and complexity. So a customer that can't pay on time, we really don't want to have as a customer. And that includes 30-day terms. We very early in our days recognized the importance of paying our suppliers early, not just on time. Early because payment discounts are worth it, and because you get a lot of respect and partnership with your suppliers when you treat them like gold. But that means our customers have to pay us on time. So that credit piece was key. Of course, culture, got to be able to work with people, and then we wanted a more complex product that would drive essentially an enhanced margin in the business.
So can I ask a couple tough questions on the 3 C's? Because I think they're awesome, and every business could benefit, right? If all your customers meet the 3 C's, right? Credit, pay on time, culture, and then complexity. Meaning, and I think complexity, what I hear from that is that they actually need from us something, right? We're not going to be commoditized because we're doing something important for them. So that makes a ton of sense. So two quick questions on that. How do you evaluate the credit ahead of time?
So because we keep our customer list small, less than 20, actually right now we have about 18, I get very intimate. And it's really a requirement of ours with a customer. We're not running just a DMB. We are actually looking into their capital structure and really understanding how they're financed. How do they go about business? If we're not their only supplier, what does it look like? It's a small world in what we do. We only buy from the key players in the industry. So we're able to talk to most of them to say, hey, we're going to partner with this customer. What do you know about them? So we're able to get some of that intelligence as well. And it's just a part, you've got to be able to talk. I've got to be able to talk to the CEO and the CFO. And some of our customers are 15 billion as far as their size. Right. I mean, they're big, Right. So my ability to work up through a division, up to the president of that division, a multi-billion-dollar division, and talk and have this a face-to-face it's a critical part of our relationships.
And I mean, look, you said something, I think you said something not up front, but you said something along the way that I think maybe is foundational, right? You wouldn't be able to probably do this if you had hundreds of customers, but the fact that you structured the business in such a way that you've got a manageable number, that's probably got to be part of the way that gets you there.
It is, yeah. I think for us, it's quality over quantity. It is service is critical because we want the higher complexity. And higher complexity for us is not just the technology. It could be a difficult supply chain, which is everybody right now. I was going to say. So that's, but it could have been.
Everyone listening was like, what? Yeah, that's me.
It could be in the pandemic time. But, so that ability to understand what the customer really needs. Are they designing new products? They need a design partner. Do they have a distribution that they need across the world, which one of our customers does? What is it that they need that makes them a little bit more complex that then I can come back to, understanding the relationship, the partnership, and then staff correctly for it. One of the things we do very well is customer service, engineering, purchasing support. Our buyers are dedicated buyers to our customers, so they learn the product inside and out. We have dedicated program managers. And I won't allow us, I'm not chasing revenue, and my dad wasn't either when he was running the company, for the sake of adding clients at a pace that doesn't make sense, that our service would start to slip.
I want to unpack this so much just to understand, how did you know you were in an industry that could support that? You know what I mean? There's not every industry that could survive with 18 customers, right? Because you got to have enough business with enough customers to truly support something. They've got to have a consistent need, right? If you have 18 customers, but their needs are herky-jerky, that's a struggle to even meet that demand. Did you fall into it? Was it something that you and your dad or you and your other management team sat down and strategically worked towards over time?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if you look back over the history of the business, there's times where we've had more than that, where we've had 25 or 30. And then what we essentially decided to do is our incumbent customers were our best path to growth. So instead of trying to go out and add additional customers, let's look inside our existing customer, who is in many cases diversifying their spend. So they've got another EMS partner just like us, and our ability to say, hey, listen, we can perform that business just as well, or the next product you're launching, can we please be on the front end of it with you? And that has taken us a good 5 to 7 years to get to some critical mass of really growing the business. And those customers have come on board because technology is growing so fast. They're always adding. We build gas handheld detectors for one of the largest companies in the world. You have a gas leak at your house, they use a detector, we build it. That portfolio alone has been evolving. So when they release a new product, we're awarded that product normally. We're competitive, but our quality and our delivery has allowed us the luxury to compete on that.
And I got to imagine that when you develop those deep relationships and you can support it with the high quality customer service, the on-time delivery, you can have that conversation that says, hey, give us more, maybe not sole supplier. Maybe you can convince someone to be a sole supplier if they know that you're doing everything you need to do to make sure that you've got the supply on time, you're going to deliver the quality. And at the end of the day, what do they want? They want to know that when they order something from you, it comes on time, right, the first time. And that's probably worth a few percentage points of margin that you can get. So win for everybody.
You're hitting on something that's critical. And I always tell my team, what's the right to win? We have to have a right to win. And the right to win for us is based on, we generate about 400,000 printed circuit boards a year out of our shop. Okay. So out of 400,000, we have less than 0.5% of returns. So if we have more than 25 to 30 boards back from any selection of customers at any time throughout the year, that would be a lot. So we just don't generate bad quality. Now, we're not perfect, but what we've done is heavily invest in automation. Robotic placement of components, automated inspection of components, not just from an optical, but from a laminography, which allows us to slice through solder joints to make sure connections on components that are blind, where there's no solder joints that you can see with the eye. We can see those through. It's almost like an ultrasound.
Yep.
Testing services, all types of. So we put millions and millions of dollars into robotics and inspection equipment, and
as just to reduce. Well, because you probably need that to keep up with pace of production and reduce defects simultaneously, right? Because you could probably check most. Well, not the ultrasound, but you could check most stuff manually, but it will just take forever.
It would, and we do still do 100%. Believe it or not, we still believe in that 100% quality, and because we want someone handling that product right before it leaves. The thing thing is because it's been reassured so many times throughout its prior steps, once it gets there, there's almost not, there could have been somebody that damaged something by accident because they, nicked a corner on something. We want that caught at final in the event that there was.
To get like as close to zero defects.
Exactly, yeah. And when you're building we build the communication system for the Pentagon. So actually I have to tell you a really quick story. I was at the Yale CEO Summit this week. They had 100 CEOs from around the country and 30 mayors. I had breakfast with the mayors of Mesa, Arizona, Spokane, Washington, and Shreveport, Louisiana. And the Shreveport, Louisiana mayor shook my hand and thanked me because he was in the service and used some of the warfighter IED jammers that we build. And he was almost in tears. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. So after 9/11, when we were sending our troops over to the Middle East and they were getting literally blown up by roadside bombs that people were detonating with garage door openers.
Garage door openers.
Our country quickly brought technology online to jam those. So within 2 years of 9/11, we were the prime producers of the printed circuit boards for those jammers. They were leaving our building, the printed circuit board assemblies, and going and getting integrated. And then they were out in theater within a week of leaving our building. They were in every Humvee. They're in most presidential caravans that are out, every embassy. We now build them in backpack form as well. And this is public information. We've gotten awards from our customer for it. And we've had soldiers come to us and say thank you. They knew that the jammer was working because you could see the light. So what we build every day is really life-saving and life-changing. And for me to end up at that event in New York this week, and here I am thanking these mayors for keeping us safe during such trying times in our country, and he's thanking me for building the technology that he knows he used in his Humvee. So it's a pretty amazing world, the technology and what it does.
That is pretty. That's pretty amazing. And it must do you good every day, and the people that work at Microboard every day to know that the stuff you guys do really touches lives.
It does. It does. In fact, about a week and a half ago, right after, unfortunately, the Uvalde shooting, I took my employees all outside, 135 of them, and I said, we're going to go outside and we're going to talk. And I said, we're going to, first of all, we feel powerless. We're not. We have the power of prayer. We have the power of each other. And we're the only manufacturer in the country building an indoor shot detection system, which we have lobbied to be put in at Capitol Hill. It is being used throughout the United States in various forums and complexes that I'm not at liberty to speak to, but we're the only ones building it. And it's a security system that will allow 1-second response to the police in the event that there is a shot fired.
Sort of like the shot, I forget what they call it, but there's an outside shot detector.
There's shot spotter outside.
The shot spotter,
yeah,
right.
This is an indoor version of that, but it allows people to lock down and understand where the shooter is or where the shooter's moving without having to wonder. So, technology is, and unfortunately in that setting, that's going to become like a sprinkler system or a fire alarm for a building, but we're building it. So I said, we're not powerless. We're doing it, guys. So I remind my team often, it's easy to sit there and try to run 400,000 boards a year, and everyone's different, and it's complex, and it's a difficult day. We have to keep going back to what it is we're building. Life, defibrillators that are saving lives every day.
Yeah, gas detectors. I mean, you guys are making some pretty cool stuff.
It's really, really neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now it's going to be hard after all that to switch back to my next question, but we're going to try and make it work, which is the culture question, and something that I suspect a lot of other business owners run into, which is sometimes the culture of a customer changes after the customer becomes a customer, right? So you're working for a particular program manager, or you're working for the president of a division, and for some reason unrelated to anything Microboard is doing, there's a change at that organization, and now all of a sudden that culture is a bit different than it was before. Maybe they don't see you the same way. They're under some pressures, whatever it is. And now it's one of only 18 customers, one of 15 customers. How do you deal with those types of pressures, right? Because there's a lot of benefits to fewer customers, but the flip side of that is each one is now meaningful.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we have a motto, which is your first loss is your best loss. And although we don't hardly ever have any losses. We haven't had any in 20 years. We are not afraid to stand up for who we are as a company, and not in a demanding way, in a professional, articulate, reasonable way of how we do business. And those things have happened. We have had executives that have changed out, and somebody comes in with a new thought process. Or I think one of my strengths is working with our customers. And one, I know finance and accounting and contractual agreements so well that I can dig in pretty easily as the CEO and owner and really decide, is the person across the table going to be able to work through this with me, or are we really going to go our separate ways here, and then we have to orderly work through this. And I think that's one of the gifts that I have that frankly I'll probably always hold on to. Even as we try to grow the company and potentially have a second site one day, I always want that either strategic growth path with the customers that I'm working on, or this one's gone a little bit sideways. We've got to kind of work it out. And I enjoyed doing that in my GE days.
Yeah, well, you've certainly got the background and the personality for it.
Yeah, it was. You have to be patient. Yeah, so.
You've worked with some pretty big customers, and you said you do some prime work for the federal government. How do you get them to pay in 30 days?
Oh, good question. Yeah. It's tough.
I bet.
I think they always start at 120.
Listen, there's a lot of people listening that work for the big engine companies, the government, whatever, and
Actually, we've turned a few away that wouldn't come down to net 30. Believe it or not. And, I know once that cash train starts, it's, your bills are being paid. So what's the difference, right? Well, the problem that we've seen over the years is 120 becomes 180, which becomes what, and all of a sudden, you're, so there are some companies over the years where we just said we wanted to stay to a strict net 30. Occasionally, depending on the client and the contract, we'll go to net 45, never further. So it's really how much they want to work with us. And there are thousands of EMS companies in the country, but we have a niche and a specialty and a reputation for the type of work we do. So when a customer really wants to partner with us, it's a requirement. It's just the way we operate.
This is how you. So. This is what you got to meet to get there and make it happen. And just so I think maybe to educate folks, why is that so important? Because maybe you could speak to, in a business way, sort of cost of capital. Because I think you made a point that I think some business people don't pick up on, which is like, well, the money comes eventually, so what's the big deal? But there is a real cost to essentially loaning someone money for 120, 160, 180 days. Yeah,
look at the rates now, where they're going all of a sudden just on all of us, And so, for us, I think there's two things. The cost of capital, clearly. But the second thing is, what we've seen over time is when things start to unravel a little bit, if you're not keeping your clients close and the credit close, it can unravel that much quicker into that much more of a dangerous situation. So all of a sudden you're 90 days on a payment issue. There's some product that came back. There's, misunderstanding on this PO over here. And before you know it, you have this mess, and it's just, we like to just keep it all tight. And if rather than it getting out of control and ballooning on us, we deal with it, in real time. And we've just found it's an efficient way to run the business for us from both cost of capital and performance of our accounts, basically.
Well, listen, there's another underlying thing here, which is all builds on itself with the 3 C's is every cycle that you and the team aren't spending chasing dollars, figuring out how to mix money around and make this happen and close that, are cycles the team can spend figuring out how to make the products better, deliver on time, and meet customer needs. So it's sort of like this positive cycle that feeds on itself.
Absolutely. I always tell my team, if we have an RMA where there's a debit that's taken, and it could be $1,000, fix it now. The longer you guys wait to fix it, you will spend 9 hours fixing it. If you let it get out of control. So we try to. That's exactly the point. Is and we've got a lot more important things to be doing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of more important things to be doing, the company has kind of a mission and a purpose that's sort of beyond growth, beyond business. And I think it's an interesting one. I'd love for you to share it.
Yeah. So to me, this is really, the foundation of the company. We always say we build technology, the most advanced technology in the world, to provide resources and funding to those that have the least in the world. So when my dad started the company, and we were young, and his mission at that point, he had done very well out as a consultant. at that point, the mantra I like to say is there's no U-Haul behind your hearse. So we can all make a lot of money. And what are we going to do with it? There's lots of great things we can buy. There's lots of great places we can visit. Certainly we want to do, some of that, obviously. But there's a lot of people in the world in need. So what he decided was at the end of each year, the company would give away all of its profit. And we'll come back to that in a minute to explain what that really means, to those in very remote parts of the world where there's tremendous hostility, lack of water, lack of medical, lack of education. So over the last 40 years, really, we've been blessed to engage with 9 NGO organizations. They're all grassroots. They've mostly been brought into us through church organizations that we work with that are on the ground in places like India with a school that are feeding and educating 500 children from the lowest caste in India, the Dalit caste. These are rag pickers I've visited. I've gone from their slum.
Rag pickers?
That's how they make money. They pick rags. They'll make 2-3 pennies a day picking out of garbage and bringing it. And when they bring the garbage in, they'll peel it apart and they'll find leather for shoes and they separate it. And that's how they make money. The garbage gets separated. So we went over and visited in 2017, and we're the only funder for this school. They graduated their first class of 4 students 2 years ago, and those students have done very well. And we're going to give these kids a life. They need a chance. Their parents at first did not want them going to school. They needed them to go make a couple pennies a day in order for them to eat, literally. We've had to convince the parents that the kids need education. So it's real. I think we see a lot of it on the news and everything, but it's real. We're doing it. We're also in Jos, Nigeria, where Boko Haram is very violently attacking villages. There are 1,200 widows and orphans there that we're feeding, just us taking care of them. We have something called Sandy's Helpers. It's actually named after my mom. My mom's a big animal fan. And we've got this dog. I don't want to pet your dog afterwards. And it's goats, chickens, bees that they're harvesting and taking care of and then passing it down to the next generation to be able to feed and sustain themselves. So these are very real. We're also digging water wells in that area. We're teamed with some other associations who are bringing big rigs in. And what we found is water is life, and water, which is life, brings peace. And Boko Haram needs the same water that the orphans and their mothers need. So we've actually found some breaking down of barriers in those regions as we go over. We're also we don't come in as a caravan of, big people with buses, and we're very nondescript. We're in regular garb, their garb a lot of times, and they're accepting of us. And we're just able to bring solutions to them to give them a better life. So my dad passed last year. My brother, sister, and I are the majority owners of the company with our spouses and our kids. And we are happily carrying that legacy on, and happily at the end of every year deciding where the profit's going to go.
So you had said you were going to come back to the profit, so I don't want to trip over that. I'll let you kind of come back to that. Yeah.
So I know people look at me like they're like, what? Really, at the end of every year, whether it's $500,000, $2 million, we give it away. Now, we take care of our employees, obviously. We take care of our customers and our suppliers. We buy the equipment we need. We've got millions of dollars of equipment in our building. We get that done because we've got to run the business.
Right.
But when that year ends, we get our net income to a very low number that the bank kind of goes, but they trust us because they know we've done this, and we have a very strong balance sheet. We're primarily debt-free. And because of that, they know my background with GE Capital. My dad was a brilliant businessman, and we give the money away. And our partners rely on it. They've come to rely on it as well. And, it's not guaranteed to them every year. I mean, we could have a bad year.
Right, sure.
But we have a lot of faith that, that God is blessing us and, giving us a mission, and we're going to carry it on.
It's unbelievable. And I'm just curious, you've obviously doing some really amazing stuff in some pretty remote places. And this is maybe a very odd question, but why remote versus local?
Really good. It's a really good question. So what we decided was there's so much help locally. There are from all your AmeriCares and your Red Cross, and you can go down the neighborhood, and there's so much need locally. We recognize that we really felt called to the places where most people just wouldn't go. So in Jos, Nigeria, we have a missionary there that works through our church that landed there 20 years ago, him and his wife, and they said, this is a place that has need. He now has 110 people on staff with him that are primarily volunteer that go out into the local area with food and water and education every day. And we're helping fund what they need for resources. So this is really grassroots. And we just felt that there weren't people going into some of these more remote areas, and that was our calling. And we've stayed really true to it. We're also down in the Congo. There's a lot of hostility in the Congo, a lot of daily brutality. And so there's a pastor down there that we support. We've helped put a radio program in for him. They can't even travel in a lot of places. It's so dangerous. So the use of this type of radio is, how they really get good news out to people to keep their morale up. So there's pockets of different things that we've done. In South Africa, we're working with a pastor who is working with young women that are often taken for brides and misused at a very early age. So it's different missions based on the area, but we feel that that's what we're called to, is where they're less served areas.
It's funny, there's a really nice sort of thread you could move between sort of like the commitment to the support and the consistency of driving that, in the same way you sort of have the consistency and the mission and driving the business. It's like a really, regimented feels like not positive enough of a word, but just a really well-planned, well-thought-out commitment to execution that must be really rewarding, both to what you're able to do for your customers and also what you're able to do for the world. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a good point, because my poor VP of Business Development, who's phenomenal, the best in the country by far, and I say to him often, no more customers. He's like, well, why'd you hire me? And it's not that I really don't want, we want the perfect next customer. And he could launch 10 new customers in. We're very focused on who we want to be. We're not, and it's the same thing with our missions and humanitarian partners. We're very focused. We're not, and we make mistakes, and every once in a while we dabble in one and we go, oh, well, we learned there.
That didn't work.
But I think, and the nice thing is my staff is right on board with that. There's no one on my staff who's saying, hey, listen, I'm upset because you're not supporting this humanitarian thing, or we really want this customer and why aren't we doing it? We're really in unified mission on both the business and our humanitarian on how we operate.
Listen, when you've got clarity of purpose and clarity of execution, and then you can stick to it and get there, people can get behind that, right?
Absolutely.
They know what they're signing up for, and you don't need to find 1 million people to get on the team, right? You have 140 or 150 people, and if you grow manage, you can find those people, right?
Yeah, and one of the ways we do that, Ari, is every Tuesday at 1:05, we have chapel in our business, every Tuesday. And if I'm not there, it still happens. And we have about probably 30 employees that come right now. And this past Tuesday, our mission contact that works with me here is in Jos, Nigeria. So he Skyped in, and we had chapel with him. So there's a real connection here. A lot of times on different Tuesdays, the NGO partners out in the field will Skype in just by themselves. So we're hearing from those different areas of the world. So it's alive in our business every day and every week.
That's amazing. Wow. And now I don't know how to move to this, and I know we're like really running out of time. But I did want to talk on this. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes on, since we're sort of on workforce a little bit, I know you're very heavily involved in the Connecticut ecosystem and the business environment. And you and I offline have aligned really closely on the idea that the private sector needs to get up off our duffs and put our shoulder to the whatever and make things happen to move the environment where we want it to be. And one of the biggest things is workforce development. And you're really involved in workforce dev and regional sector partnerships. And I wonder if you could we have only a few minutes because I know you have somewhere you need to be, but maybe you could just quickly kind of talk about your view on the regional sector partnerships and where we're going with workforce in Connecticut.
Yeah, so it's like, I think it's a great question. First of all, I love Connecticut. I'm raising my family here. I want to be here. I love, today's one of the most glorious days here in June, 78, no humidity. It's like, bottle it, Yep. But I decided probably about 5 years ago that we needed to understand if we were going to grow here, really grow our business here. And what did that look like versus other states? You've got South Carolina calling and Texas calling, and they're all calling, right? And Virginia, and we visited Virginia, and we'll give you a free building, and lots of incentive, right? So I said, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to decide, if this is where I should be? And I kind of stood on the sideline for another 2 years, and then I got a call, did I want to be on a couple of the boards in the state? And first I said, what does this mean? And it started with the CBIA, and at that time I just wasn't in a position where I was with my kids to do that. So fast forward, over the last 2 years, I jumped into the Concept Board, Industry 4.0, Advisory Council. I'm on the board of the Workplace with Joe Carbone. I'm on his executive committee that's in the southwest part of the state. And then
Joe's a character, man.
He's great. Yeah. And then they tapped me to help lead the Southwest RSP, Regional Sector Partnership. So in Connecticut, there's 4,000 manufacturers. 89% of them have less than 50 employees. So we've got a big ecosystem. Lots of things we can talk about, as far as what we all need. And I think the main thing of the RSPs was let the executives tell us what they need, rather than the state, who has quite a bit of funding available, trying to bring programs down to us that we may not need. And even before COVID, workforce was a challenge here. Workforce is a challenge everywhere now, across the whole country. It just exacerbated itself here because not only do we need the talent, but we need affordable housing. We need better transportation. Medical and utilities are outrageous. Utility here more than pretty much anywhere else in the country. I mean, we've got some real challenges to be able to, keep and retain and attract businesses here. So I jumped into the RSP. It's been a year. We strategized and formulated very quickly and convened with a facilitator. Our section of the state has moved out on some really good key deliverables. We're waiting to see what the state's next steps are on whether the RSPs will be a platform that will be acknowledged as a convening platform with a direct line up to the state. We had a great meeting yesterday at CCSU up in New Britain. We had a lot of the state leaders there, and I think we're going to hear more in the fall. There's a lot of great organizations out there, CMC and all of its surrounding industry groups. They're great. My question to the audience yesterday, and I will continue to always ask this, what are the metrics of success, and what are the calls to action from every meeting? And I think what I hear a lot of times is many of those organizations just aren't working that way. They have great industry focus, but maybe they're not able to articulate metrics of success that's going to drive their industry or their part of the state. They don't have clear calls to action when they're done with their meeting. The RSPs are creating that. One of the clear calls to action we're doing is trying to create the workforce of the future. How do you do that? Well, you have to get with the education partners. So just in Southwest Connecticut alone, where there's 300 manufacturers, including Lockheed, ASML, ourselves, we've got over 4,000 employees represented just in the companies there's 18 companies that are active in our RSP. We have partnered with 22 education partners to drive curriculum development. Now that's a 2 to 3 year journey. Those students won't really start by the time we change the curriculum and advance it. But we have to do that.
The sooner you start, the sooner you're finished.
Yeah.
And I think. I've heard Paul Lavoie talk a few times since he became the chief manufacturing officer, and I always hear him say, it's an 18 to 20 year journey to make a new human. So we better figure out how to speed that process up for the ones we already have to get them in the workforce. Listen, we need to have you back because we need to talk about a whole ton more stuff, but you have something to get to that I am going to.
I have a family on a Friday night that hasn't seen me all week, and I've got to shuttle some 9th graders to a movie. So
absolutely. But I think what I do want to do rapid fire round of questions really quick, but one thing I think is really just connect this thread one more time is, I think that if we can tap your energy to understand how to get clarity of purpose, clarity of vision and then clarity of action behind to make that vision a reality with what you've done, understanding building what your dad started, but what you've really done and continue to build at Microboard. If we can do that with workforce development in Connecticut, we will be a global leader in workforce. So I'm behind it, and we'll have you back, and we'll talk some more.
We'll do great.
And we're going to go to a rapid fire round of questions. Are you ready?
Got it.
All right. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees, just because my husband. I don't really watch baseball.
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Neither.
Really?
Can I say neither?
You can say
Dunkin'
neither.
gives me a headache, and the Starbucks is too expensive.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Oh, I'd be in the middle.
In the middle?
Not too exotic.
Not too exotic.
Not too exotic,
okay.
but I would go away.
You go away. iPhone or Android?
I am an iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
Favorite business book?
Just read Play Nice But Win by Michael Dell. Awesome book about the story of Dell.
That's funny.
Successes and failures and how he compartmentalizes his mindset. Awesome. Play Nice But Win.
That's so funny. Direct from Dell was a book I read, really inspired me in the late 90s. If you could do anything and you had to do something other than be president and CEO of Microboard, what would you do?
It's a really good question. I thought when I was younger I'd be an equestrian instructor, and now I'm too afraid to do that. I'm too afraid to get on the back of a horse. But I think I enjoy being with people. I enjoy delivering messages. There's this little piece of me that's like, maybe I could be a politician. I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't know. So I don't know. I love seeing people complete things, go on journeys that are difficult, even things that are hard. I'm like, let's go, let's get this done. So it's a really good question. I would say I'd probably go back into the workout world if I wasn't in the manufacturing world, because seeing a company that's been performing, that's fallen on hard times, which, oh, by the way, is going to happen quite a bit here this coming year, and bringing them back is really awesome, because you've not only brought a company back, you brought all those people back, all those customers, all those suppliers. So it's what I kind of know, and I enjoyed it a lot.
I think that'd be super fun. What's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career, Nicole, that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
Yeah, so I'll never forget when my dad asked me something, and then the next day he asked me again. And I looked at him and I said, don't ever ask me for something twice. And it was in a respectful way. Being organized, it's just, I know it sounds like a cliche thing, but I think you can do anything in life if you're organized and you have the ability to just, get through things and be passionate about something. So there's a lot of career moments I've had that I've looked back on and said, wow, that was just stellar. In my early life, being organized. In this most recent 5 years, having an executive coach has changed the way I work, the way I think, the way I study, the way I interact with people. That's a whole nother discussion. I'm very blessed. I have someone I work with that God brought into my life that has just really, really helped me as I've been navigating being a better leader, CEO, community member, mom, just all kind of put together. So
that's awesome. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career, Nicole, that if you could go back and tell your young self and she'd listen to you, you think have a real positive impact?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Not to take everything so seriously. And I slow down. I have a tendency to there's a piece of me that wants to get it off the list, and then there's a piece of me that says, but get it off the list properly. Mm-hmm. I think there's a way to slow down, be patient with ourselves, be patient with the process, not so much worry about the list. That as I mature, I feel myself getting comfortable in that part of my skin, basically. So if I went back, 15, 20 years ago, I would have probably been more patient with myself, more patient with people around. I've never had a temper or a flare type thing, but I would move quickly through a lot of things. So
this has been awesome. Nicole, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. Well, definitely, episode 2 has to happen because we have tons of stuff we didn't talk about.
It was great, Ari. Thank you. And thank you for what you do. I mean, getting the message out about Connecticut, that is awesome. And I can't wait. I love to watch them. Usually on a Sunday morning, my husband's catching me with my cup of coffee watching one of your things, your podcast. So thank you for what you do.
You're very welcome.
It's awesome.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.